My name is Gunter Chris Fisk. I was born in June 1925 in Bremerhaven, Germany. Bremerhaven is a little town in the northern part of Germany. When I was 8 years old, Hitler came to power. It was in 1933. And about 10 years later, I had to join the Hitler Youth, like everybody else did. It was a must. You have to join the Hitler Youth. When I was 14 years old, I started apprenticeship. And it was around, I was 1939. And I finished this apprenticeship in 1943. I served my apprenticeship in a rocket factory. We built little rockets and signal rockets and everything for the war, because the war was already on. And in 1943, after I finished my apprenticeship, I had to join what we call the Reichsarbeitsdienst, RAD. That is another must. You have to join the Reichsarbeitsdienst and work for 3 months. We built an airport in the little town of Zwischenahn in Germany, northern Germany. They launched the W1 rocket from that airport, and we had to build the launch ramps. We did that for 3 months, and then another group came in and followed up with us, and they worked for 3 months, and so on and so on. In July 1943, I was drafted in the German army. The army section was artillery. We were artillery detection regiment, German artillery Beobachtungsabteilung. We had 3 months boot camp, and we trained on special radio equipment and other equipment to detect enemy artillery. This is a picture of myself. Was taken after we finished boot camp in Lemgo near Paderborn, and I was called a cannoneer, which means the same like a soldier in the infantry or a soldier in the artillery or airmen. Cannoneer is just for artillery, and my uniform was showing that. I got a red stripe on top of my head, on my head. That's a red stripe. Underneath is the eagle on the German insignia. Down on my shoulder pads, they're dark green with a red lining on, and it says B6, which indicates my regiment, B6, Abteilung B6. And of course, on my right side, I wear the German eagle with the swastika under. And that's the way we came out of boot camp. This uniform we had to turn in, and we received, right after this, we received our field uniform before we went to Russia, which is entirely different. It was different headgear, different jackets, heavier clothes, and also no more shoulder pads, because they didn't want anybody to identify your unit. Everything else was the same. Basically, when this picture was taken, I just turned, I believe, 18 years. I was the smallest one in the whole platoon. We had, after 3 months boot camp, we had a maneuver in Paderborn, Germany, which was a big tank and panzer training field. We stayed there for about 1 week and trained with real live ammunition, detecting artillery maybe 10, 15 miles away, We detected tanks 2 miles away, and so on. Everything that shoots artillery shells, we had to detect. We could do it. We were trained for that. We did that very good. We came back from our training in November 43, and in December, the first week in December, we received our field uniforms and weapons. That means we get a complete new set of uniforms fit for cold weather, weapons fit for cold weather, food for the next 2 weeks. And we left for a little town up in northeast Germany called Königsberg. It was a big staging area for all the German troops who go into the eastern part of the front, which is Russia. And in this staging area, we stayed about 1 week. We left Königsberg in the middle of December 43 and traveled by train to a town called Brest-Litovsk. It's on the eastern part of Poland. It was the big railroad center, and I can show you on a map if you can pick that up. This is the town of Königsberg where we assembled, right here. And we traveled by train to right over here, Brest-Litovsk. From over here, we had to change trains because the Russian spur was smaller than our spur in Western Europe. So we went on a Russian train. And it took us about 2 weeks on a Russian train to travel to Minsk. That's where just about the front line of the German-Russian armies were at that time. In Minsk, we were divided. Each Abteilung or each regiment went to a different section. We went to the northern section, right over here. It's called the Pripyat Sums, right here, marshes. It's nothing but marshes, very much like the marshes here in Mississippi. Water, swamp, very few trees, a lot of mosquitoes in the summertime, very few people live in there. In these Pripyat swamps, we went on from there on to the river Dnieper, which is a river that runs right down through it to the Pripyat swamps right here. And it was 4 weeks till we finally started moving away from the river because the Russians were then dug in at night time, and the next day night we had to get out again because they of course were advancing too. And we traveled most of the time by night if we had to travel. By day it was too dangerous. You had to cope with partisans in the back of us and with the Russian army. My first real battle was in a small village. The name of the village was Samsani. I never forget that. I was just 17 or 18 years old. I was just a kid. It was a little river named Turja River. And the Russians came overnight. They built little walkways underneath the river, underneath the water of the river, and walked over the water during the night and just surprised us early in the morning around 3, 4 o'clock. And we were a lot of people on the other side, but we didn't have too much ammunition left. So we had to be very careful with what we do. Finally, our commanding officer, then the commanding officer, which was a General Scherner was his name. He was a very small man, but he was tough. And he told us, you guys stay. Yes. I was one of the lucky ones. There was, from my immediate platoon, which I have a picture here, my immediate platoon, I can remember only 2 people came out of it.
Tilt it up a little, Chris, so you can get it on. See, watch him on camera, Chris.
Right here,
See how he's trying to tighten in on it?
that's me, and that's the other fellow. We were the only 2 guys who really moved out of this battle and survived. All the other people, I lost track of it. I don't know where they were, so we were detached to a different platoon with different people again, and we needed these people because our job was to detect artillery, and that required more people than 2. So we were detached to a different company, and sometimes an entirely new crew, which you don't know, and it was pretty tough. This general was right there in the forward ditch. There was no way anybody could move out or could move back or do anything. He was right there, and he had his people with him. And he was just a tough old man. I guess he didn't give a damn no more what was going on. He just wanted to win the war all by himself. He tailored himself very much like the old Kaiser Fridericus of Prussia, who was very similar to him, and he thought, that was a good general, I want to be a good general. From then on in, after the Russians came over to the Pripyat Sums and basically ran over us here, we continually traveled from this point here in Russia, Lublin, Krakow, Częstochowa, into East Germany. It took us about, from December 43 till about December 44 to travel this area by foot. About 300 to 400 miles. You fight, you stay a day, you dig in for a couple of days, then you go out again, you walk back again. So it took us talks from high officials which told us, don't let the Russians come into Germany. But in the meantime, the Russian army advanced and built up a motorized trucks, 2.5-ton Dodge trucks, which had mounted machine guns on it. They had hundreds of them, tanks, better than the Russian T-34. And all this equipment came from America. That was the first time really the Russians had shoes on. They had American-made shoes. When we made prisoners, we saw the shoes made in the USA, which was amazing to us. So in 1944, in December, right before Christmas, the last week before Christmas, we stopped the Russians. And at this time, in December 44, my hometown in Germany was bombarded by airplanes. And my mother died in that attack. So I was entitled to a funeral vacation, which I got on December 12th. I left the front area and traveled to my hometown, Bremerhaven. The funeral was supposed to be on the 18th. My vacation, my funeral vacation, was from December 12 to December 22. When I came home, I found out that the funeral could not be done at that time. They had to wait till the December 22 for the funeral. So I had to get another week furlough. I went to the city commander and had an extra week furlough on my travel papers. We buried my mother on the 22nd, and I left Germany on the 29th. I had my vacation was over on the 28th. I left Germany on the 29th. I came back to the Eastern Front where I left on January the 3rd. On December 28th, the Russian, and I heard on the radio, we were listening to the news, that the Russians had started a big offensive, and everybody was moving in there, and they had switched generals, and the general they had in the area was Marshal Zhukov. This is the same general who took Stalingrad from the Germans years before. Anyway, he was there, and he was commanding this section of the front. And I said to my family, we were listening to that is my area. It don't look like I'm going to get back to my old outfit. And my father said, well, you got to go anyway. Wherever you wind up, you wind up. So I left on the 29th. I got back to Eastern Germany on January the 3rd. And just like I thought, I couldn't find my old outfit no more. My old company and the whole regiment, the Abteilung, was gone. I found 4 men in we had a place near the front line where the German Field Army, which was composed of MPs and investigative people, had a station where they tell you where to go and where your unit was. And when we came up there, they said, well, we don't know where they are. So finally, we found 4 people out of the 4 companies. And these 4 people lost completely their units. And I remember them by name. And I talked to them, and one of them was this fellow here. He was, in fact, my platoon leader for a while. And this is my platoon leader. He was what we call Unteroffizier, and up to the last year, in 1945, we were together. And he got shot by a Russian sniper. We believe it was a Russian sniper. We're not sure. But he got shot in the left side of his head, and the bullet came out on the other side, and he was not immediately dead. He was laying there, and he was looking at us, and he blinked his eyes a few times. I don't remember him saying anything. But then within about 5 minutes, he was, I guess, running out of blood. He was dead. He was just peeled over. And I got this picture from him. I put down his name on the day he died, and I tried to locate his family later on in the town where he's from, but I was never successful locating anybody of his family. They probably would have liked the picture or would have liked to hear how he died, but I was not able to find him.
What was his name?
His name was Erich Henschel, and he was from Teplitz in Germany. What I think is the town was pretty much bombed by the American Air Force, so the family probably got bombed out and moved to a different town or city. So I could never get in touch with him. We were the only ones left from our Abteilung, from about, I would say, 620 people. And I consider myself real lucky, because if my mother would not have died and I would not have gotten the vacation, the furlough to go to her funeral, I would have been in that big bunch, and I don't know where I would have wound up. So since all our equipment was lost, we were detailed to a tank troop. That means we were not driving the tank, we were supposed to guarding tanks while they were in attacking. Guarding the tank from enemy soldiers coming up there and throwing mines at it and stuff like that. There were 4 people per each tank. We had 2 people walking on each side of the tank. And the tanks were, and about, I would say about 30 minutes later, the tank stopped, and we didn't know why. And we could not look up there because we had to watch the surrounding. And then a sergeant came out of the tank and told us to give him a hand. This officer, who was the tank commander, had got a shot in the head. He was shot right through the head, and he fell over his tank hole, and he was laying there, and they pushed him over on the tank, and the sergeant took over. The sergeant turned the tank around, and we went back to the command outpost, because he was not entitled to run the tank. There had to be an officer. So again, I was pretty lucky. That time, another guy got shot, and I was supposed to have turned around with him. That was the second time I was lucky. About 1 week later, we were retreating to the city of Oppeln, a little town in Germany on the eastern border of Germany, eastern Poland border. And as we marched this street to the town, there was another street, a one-way street was angled off, a 90-degree angle from that street. And on the end of the street was sitting a Russian tank. And we were marking one by one on the main street, and this tank was sitting on the other side. And when we came to the crossing, this tank just fired one shot from his gun, from his cannon, and hit the middle of the street. I received a shrapnel in my left head here, and it was one that was bleeding. We called for the medics. The medic had all his equipment on his sled with ice and snow on the road. So he pulled the sled next to me, and then he ran. Help yourself, he said. So that's what we did. My buddy next to me, he had both eardrums busted. He couldn't do nothing. He couldn't hear no more. So both of us, we helped ourselves to some medic bandages and stuff, and reported back to our company commander, which sent us to a hospital in Eastern Germany. While we were in the hospital in Eastern Germany, the Russian army advanced more and more. And I believe I was there 3 days in a hospital. I didn't even get my shrapnel removed from there. They sent us to Western Germany to another hospital. And there was no other way out but by airplane, and they had this big Junkers 52, which was a transport plane. They came in with that, and we all had to go on that, way overloaded. And we flew out of the city of Oppeln into some other town in Western Germany in a hospital where we were treated. They operated my shrapnel out, and I had to stay there for a week. While I was in that hospital, in the meantime, the American troops arrived from the other side. So this was already in 1945. I believe it was the beginning of February in 45. So what they did, everybody who could walk in that hospital had to go back on the Western Front and fight the English and Americans, which they did. They got me, and they got some of my buddy, and they got a few other people, and out of other hospitals they got more people, till we get about 100 people together. They didn't have no weapons. We asked him what we should do. Well, when you see a dead soldier, take his gun. And when you see a dead soldier, take his ammunition. We have no weapons here. We cannot supply you with any weapons. We did that. We went all the way to on the border of France, near Rheinhausen, on the Rhine River, on the west side of the Rhine River. In the meantime, the Americans came closer and closer. My immediate superior was a master sergeant, and he was a gardener by occupation. And he had about 6 guys with him. I was one of them. And he called us all together one day and said, "Look, fellows, I got a proposition to do. How about if we wait till the Americans roll over us and then walk behind them? You know, the Germans can't fire no more. They have no more ammunition. So behind the American lines, we are pretty safe. But the Americans got plenty of ammunition. They can fire all the time, and we're constantly under fire." We all agreed. And one day we waited out on behind some railroad tracks till the American tanks and motorized infantry rolled over us, and then we walked behind them. That was pretty good. We were pretty safe that way. It lasted for about 2 weeks. And near the Harz mountain in Germany was a very mountainous road, and the Americans were already gone for 2-3 days ahead of us. We walked behind them. Every so often we see some supply trucks coming out. We had to ditch in the woods. Then one Sunday morning, it was April 20th, it was Hitler's birthday, we saw a Jeep coming down the road. And there was no way to do. One side was the mountains fell off about 200-300 feet. We couldn't ditch this way. On the other side, the mountains were straight up. So we had no room to hide. So the Jeep came in closer and closer. There was one man in there, a sergeant of the engineers. And he had a case of wine sitting next to him. And he must have finished 2 or 3 bottles of wine, because he was pretty well on his way to being drunk. He had no weapons. He stopped the Jeep, and he said, first he didn't even realize who we were. Then he said, "Where are you going?" "Oh, we want to give up. We are sick and tired of fighting," we told him. "We want to give up." "Oh," he said, "just keep on going for about 5 miles, and you run into a big motor pool. That's where I come from, and you can't give up there." So that's the way we were taken prisoner. We're not really taken prisoner. We just walked into the motor pool, and there was another sergeant, and there were several other German prisoner of war already working on the trucks. So when we came in there, he just told us, "Come on in. We need all your information about your companies, where you were and what you were doing." And we had a lieutenant from the military police coming in, and he investigated a little bit. And then we were sent to a big camp. It was in the border of France and Germany. Right there we were turned over to the French partisan. The French didn't have an army, they had partisans. The partisans were our guards. They didn't like us very much. They remembered all those years ahead of time when the German army was occupying France, and they kind of let it out on us. About 2 weeks later, we had American troops coming in, engineers. They came fresh from the United States, I guess. And they took over as guards. That was a lot better then. We got along very good with our guards. We did some wheeling and dealing and selling stuff and buying stuff, and we even had time to go out in the city of French city where we were and do some shopping there and mingle with people, and we had it pretty good. I was there for about 1 year. After 1 year, I was sent to Germany as a prisoner of war. And I was working about 25 miles from my hometown on an airport, which the American Air Force had taken over. And we kept the grass growing and cutting and kept the runways clean, and that was our job. And it was very good. My family came and visited us, and after a while they said, well, we need somebody on night shift. And but we don't have no guards on night, so we need somebody who can run away. And since I was only 20 miles from my home, I couldn't run away. They would be home before I was home if they would catch me. So they decided that besides me, there were 2 other guys who had to work nights without guards, which we did. We had to change light bulbs on the runways and clear off debris from the runway and stuff like that. We, in November 1946, November 46, we talked to a captain. His name was Patterson. He was the provost marshal in my town. And he came to the airport. He was going on his vacation to the United States, and he had a flight from our airport. And we talked to him. We said if he could do anything to get us released as prisoners, we will keep on working here on the airport as civilians, so but we could go home at nights. When he came back a week later, he remembered that, and we remember him too. We talked to him again. He said, yes, I remember that, and as a provost marshal, he had the power and the authority to write us a discharge paper as a POW, which he did. We were discharged at the end of 1946, in December 46. And I kept working on that airport for about another 3 months till we found another job. And so that's the way I got out of the army, out of the prisoner of war time, and back into a civilian life. We have many, many memories from our time in the army, especially during our walk back from the Pripyat marshes back to Poland. It was, I remember one instance where it was summertime, and we came to a big strawberry plantation, and we haven't had strawberries, I don't know for how long. So everybody went down there and picking strawberries and eating strawberries for about an hour. Then we kept on going. And about 3-4 hours later, everybody had to go to the bathroom. The strawberries did their job. And we came to a big lake. And we used the lake to clean up, wash our clothes, and started swimming and all this stuff. And we did not know that on the other side of the lake, the Russians already had set up machine guns, expecting us. So when we were in that lake swimming, all of a sudden we hear that familiar sound of a machine gun going up over our heads. And since we didn't have any bathing suits, we looked kind of funny there, running around out of the lake, try to grab our clothes and hide behind bushes and trees and ravines and whatever there was. The Russians must have had a good laugh on the other side when they saw us. Anyway, we got out of that and traveled till we have another incident out that was near the German-Polish border. We were already attached to this tank detail, protecting the tanks. And I remember we had 4 Tiger tanks, the big ones, going down the street. And there was a big lumber yard on the left side of the street. On the right side of the street was a church with a ditch. And our tanks were going down the street, going back towards the city. And there were some dead soldiers laying left or right. And I remember one Russian soldier, I see him today, he had a leather jacket on. He was the rank of a sergeant, and he had his famous machine gun under his belly, and he was bleeding from his arm pretty bad, so he was hit either by shrapnel or bullet from the first tank. And we were the 4th tank, and we marched by him, and the first tank marched by him, the 2nd tank went by, the 3rd tank, and the 4th tank, which was our tank, went by it. And we were about 50 feet past him. By sheer luck, I just turned around and looked back. I don't know why. And there he was, just picking his gun out of his belly and aiming the gun at us, see? And I called to my, he was a staff sergeant. I called to him and said, "Sarge, look." And he turned around and he carried an automatic machine pistol. And he just about emptied his magazine at that guy. That was the 3rd time I was lucky. I'm sure that guy with his Russian machine gun would have got all 4 of us protecting that tank. He couldn't do no harm to the tank, so he would have got us. And by pure luck, that I turned around and see him pulling his gun off on his belly and aiming it, we were lucky again. And so many incidents where you think, well, normally you die in a war like that, and if you survive, there's somebody else taking care of you. That probably was. First I was safe when my mother died. I had a vacation. My whole outfit was gone. Then this guy. Then the second time when I had the shrapnel in my head and I was sent over to the Western Front. And then this Russian sergeant here who pulled out his gun and was ready to fire when we spotted him. So those incidents are very, very deeply in your mind. You never forget those. And sometimes today you wonder how one man can look at another man in the face and pull a gun and try to shoot him. It's hard to understand, but in the wartime, everything goes. We have some equipment here, which is really official, authentic German Army equipment. We have this field telephone, which was widely used. I used it many, many times. You got a crank here. It hooks up to wires to a switchboard. This is a regimental switchboard here, where the commander, the company commander, can call his regiment commander to this line, talk to him, get his orders, and this guy, the company commander, can talk to his general on the other hand and get his orders from him, or you can talk with the general to your company commander to your station. Was very handy, was happening every day. Every day we use this. Over here.
Could you tell about your fishing experience with the telephone too?
Yes. In Russia, in this particular lake, what I was talking about, we take this field telephone. It's got two hookups in here. You put wires on there and hang those wires in the water, maybe 6-7 feet apart, and you start cranking your telephone. There's an inductor in here which creates very high amperage, and you crank, the faster you crank, the more amperage you create, and you shock the fish and they come up to the top. And that's how we sometimes eat our fish. We did that many times. Right now it's against the law if you do that now. You cannot do it no more. But during the war, there were plenty fish in there. Nobody go fishing in the war in these lakes. So all you had to do is 2-3 minutes like this and you have a meal. That's the way of getting a source of food, which was very hard to get sometimes. This is the authentic German Army butter cup. This is where you go once a week or so. You put your butter in there, you screw it tight, it's airtight. It's kind of insulated ceramic plastic, and you can keep it for a long time. You need that. You have your spoon and your fork here. You can take these apart, you use either one of them and eat. It all comes out of your bag. Very primitive, but it does the trick. You have your official German Army knife. Every soldier get one. And it's a lion knife, we called it. It's very good steel. It lasts you a wartime. You hang this on your belt. We have also a hand grenade here. This is a famous German hand grenade. It's sitting in here. You got a little cap, you unscrew it. You take this thing out, this little ball out, and you pull it. And then you count 3 seconds and you throw it. And it's just like any other hand grenade. It does a lot of damage. It also comes with smoke bombs. When you want to throw a smoke screen, you can do that too. Here is a gas mask container. Every German soldier has a gas mask because we didn't know at what time and when a chemical war would be started. So we carry a gas mask all the time on our back. It was cumbersome and sometimes not so handy, especially when you go to a foxhole and stuff like that. this was many times in your way, but you had to do it. Over here, you got an authentic German helmet. I showed you the emblems on it. This is the German eagle with a swastika. On the other side, since this helmet was issued before 1943, you have black, white, red, which was the original German flag, schwarz, weiß, rot. After 1943, you had a swastika. You had a red emblem here with a swastika in there. And it was not quite as heavy as this one is, because this edge here was not on there no more. So that is the original German helmet. It's a little big for me, but that's the way it went.
They're too big or too small, right?
Yes. Then we had our field caps. This is a field cap when you do marching, or if you're on a trip, you're not in immediate battle, you don't have to wear this. You put a field cap on, this marching cap on. And you also have a kepi. We call it a kepi. Right here. It's easier than this. It's easier to carry. You usually carry it here or on your belt, and it's been worn like this. And this one, for instance, is infantry. It's got the white line on there. Mine had a red line on there. It was artillery. This is a stove. You put a little candle there, which was issued to you. You light it. You put your field.
I'm going to take it off.
No, you can put this field thing on here and set it on there and warm up your food. Most of the time, your food was getting to you cold, so you had to warm it up again if you want warm soup or something. Over here, we got the German canteen with a cap on. And this is where you keep we call it a Brotbeutel. That's where you keep your supplies. Food, mainly food, not so much clothes. Clothes you wear and wash them and put them back on. This is a belt with ammunition packs. The ammunition fits in here. As you can see, that's the ammunition. Fit in your carabine. This is your belt buckle. It says, God with us. It means God with us. This is your rain gear or Zeltband. You can make a tent out of it, or you use it as a rain gear. On this side, we have your bayonet, which can be affixed to your gun. Slip on. It has been used many times during the Second World War. Believe me, I've seen it. This is your spade. You can dig a hole with it. You can use it for everything. Very handy. Very heavy also. Over here we got the famous German boots. Original army boots. Up to 1940, summer of 1944, we had to wear these boots. You see they're nail-toed, steel nails, steel heels. You never walk them off. You walk the nails off and then you get no nails in there. But they were also very loud when you march, and they were very heavy. You get tired. After 1944, and the American introduced shoes, like the regular army shoes, the German army started wearing shoes too, without nails, rubber soles. So they were about half the weight of this. And we also have some uniforms here. This is an undershirt. You can wear this under your field jacket, which is this one right here. This is a German field jacket. Belongs to a sergeant. This line here, this slits here, indicates that this man was a sergeant. He was the owner of an Iron Cross second class. He was wounded, Eastern Front, and he had this. So he was in the wintertime. They call it also the meat freezing. They had a special name for it, meat freezing, Gefrierfleischorden, the meat freezing medal. So it was, you had to go in a real cold winter, right around 40 degrees below zero, to earn this. And this, of course, is the field jacket. You wear this in battle. You got your belt, and you got your carrying stripes that go around here, over here where you carry your ammunition bags. Then you have a summer uniform. We didn't wear these too much because where I was, it was not light enough to wear these. We always wear these year round because in Russia, Poland, you don't have too much summers. This is a regular summer uniform. It's kind of a khaki, similar to the one the Afrika Corps carries all the time. And the pants with it. This is one we had. This is a real heavy overcoat jacket. You can use this on both sides. This is in the summertime or when it's not so warm. And in wintertime, you turn it around, you got white because the snow is on the ground and everything is white. You change that. All you have to do, paint your helmet white, which we did. That's basically the single German soldier uniform. Officers, of course, are different. And there are many books out on this Second World War, which is very, very good reading material if you're interested in that. And I haven't shown you my official German Army pass. This is my pass. This is me. This was issued to me in 1943. So it's 51 years old. That's me. It's my numbers, name. Here your height and where you come from, where you were trained, and so on. It carries your equipment list. It carries the weapons list. It carries your what you get on your gas mask. And it also has your information on how much money you get. Right here, it tells you how much money you're going to get as a soldier. And I was what you call Gefreiter, which means you get one stripe, which is in a corporal, in the American equivalent. I don't know if that's about basically all. If you guys have any other questions, it was a pleasure.